And the blackface controversy involving Justin Trudeau has resurfaced today in the campaign. Toronto Liberal candidate and longtime Member of Parliament Judy Sgro is apologizing for suggesting in a radio interview that members of the black community in her riding are essentially flattered that Justin Trudeau dressed up in blackface and brownface on 3 occasions. Here's what she said, and we'll hear a reaction from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh.
But let me tell you that in knocking on doors and being in the plazas and talking to people to make sure that I'm as sensitive as I need to be if I've missed something. And those in the black community have told me that how much more love they have for the Prime Minister, that he wanted to have a blackface. He took great pride in that too. And that it's the media that have blown this into something that it shouldn't be.
It is ludicrous for Ms. Sgro to suggest that. It is embarrassing and it is shameful that she would suggest that people like Mr. Trudeau more because he did blackface. That shows a massive disconnect between the Liberal Party and, in fact, Mr. Trudeau and what real people are living and what they're experiencing. It is shameful that she said something like that.
All right, lots to discuss on the campaign trail today with our panel of party commentators to discuss this issue and others. Anne McGrath is an NDP commentator, Ashton Arsenault is a Conservative commentator, and Jeff Turner is a Liberal commentator. Good to see you all. And we heard from your leader. Let me have you follow up on this. I mean, Jagmeet Singh put it that way, said what he had to say, but what do you make of this?
Well, I mean, it's horrible what she said. You know, you cringe when you hear it, and it's. I agree with Jagmeet Singh. It's a terrible thing that she said. She should immediately apologize,
which she has done.
You know, I think she should acknowledge how hurtful those comments are. I think that Mr. Singh's reaction to it was completely accurate. And I would be willing to bet that Mr. Trudeau and the Liberal headquarters are probably pretty mad about this.
Jeff, let me ask you, I think Justin Trudeau probably thought this was behind him now. He's said he's apologized for the incidents that he was involved with wearing brown face or blackface. And I guess what struck me was different. This is a longtime member of caucus who's got to be aware of what reactions have already been from other caucus members who've said that this was hurtful and disappointing. Racialized caucus members who said this didn't work, and Justin Trudeau's apologized. I mean, is this a firing offense for this candidate?
I think it's unquestionably a stupid thing that she said and showed a lot of lack of judgment in that moment of saying that. And I think she quite appropriately and quite quickly apologized and retracted the statement. So that's the important thing right there, is that it was caught and it was apologized for and retracted. I don't think the anecdote itself is made up. I think she probably had that conversation with 1 or 2 people at the doors or in a community center, as she referenced. But I think the lack of judgment was not seeing that anecdote as a way of spinning the issue. And that was absolutely not the right approach. The party line, the Prime Minister's line, the caucus's line, to your point, is quite well grounded in this was wrong, this was hurtful, and apologize profusely and at every opportunity for those that it hurt, and that's what needed to be done here.
Ashton, what do you think?
Yeah, the number of mental somersaults that one has to make to deduce that the Prime Minister only appeared in blackface on no fewer than 3 occasions, only did so because he wanted to endear himself or become closer with the black community, truly is mind-boggling. I know that we have a quick apology from the Liberal campaign and Judy Sgro herself, which I'm sure was aided by a very upset Liberal war room. Because as you had rightfully pointed out, Peter, they had hoped that this is behind them and now it's right back on the front page. But truly, to make a mistake this late for somebody that seasoned, mind-boggling.
Okay. Well, I mean, she was rationalizing unacceptable behavior.
Correct.
Yeah, and I can't put myself in her mind, right? But it's an interesting, to your point, how you get from if those conversations happened on the doorstep to.
What would make you say that?
It's okay then. People liked it.
Not a single issue of good could come from it.
Let me switch to the border announcement from Andrew Scheer today, talking about, look, he wants to reopen the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States, which so far the Liberal government's trying to do too, to try and deal with this issue at the border of asylum seekers coming across the border at places other than official border crossings. But Andrew Scheer also said today, look, I'm going to try and renegotiate this with the U.S., and if it doesn't work, I have other options. Presumably he means he's going to declare the whole border an official border crossing, which means, no matter where they cross, they're turned around and sent home. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so the announcement today was actually a little bit more robust than that. So there's additional support announced for Canadian Border Services agents. There's additional supports announced for enhanced language training. But to your point on the safe third party arrangement, I think the Prime Minister in waiting, we'll call him Andrew Scheer.
Careful now, not yet.
Has rightfully pointed out that there is a bit of a crisis of confidence currently in Canada's immigration system. And the fact of the matter is that's because there are individuals who are getting in front of people who are doing it through legitimate means, as it has always been done in Canada. Canada is a country of immigration. We always have been, and we hopefully always will be. But to say right now that we cannot do better by negotiating a better arrangement with the United States.
But what has he got in mind if the U.S. doesn't want to move on? Like Donald Trump's got his hands
Sure.
full trying to work on safe third country agreements
Sure.
with Guatemala and other countries trying to deal with the southern border. How do you police the Canadian border if you're trying to just turn these people around and send them back?
So, look, Peter, I think there was a couple of options stated by Andrew Scheer today, but first and foremost, let's not discount what a refreshed relationship with the United States could possibly look like between President Donald Trump and Andrew Scheer. We all know that President Trump and the current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, haven't always gotten along, and we know that President Trump is not entirely unlikely to make a couple of flippant one-off comments, regardless of who the leader is. But I think with a refreshed relationship and a new government, some actual serious discussion and negotiation can be done there.
And what's wrong with this plan?
So, for one thing, I think that most Canadians, including many Conservatives, are not comfortable with Donald Trump as the president and are watching what's happening with the immigration and refugee issues in the United States with horror. Children being ripped from their parents' arms, detention camps, filthy conditions. I think that it is a horrible situation. And I think that having this announcement today, unfortunately, I think ties us too closely to that relationship with the United States that so many Canadians find really, horrific.
Jeff?
First, I'd like to just point out that there's this continuing sort of misinformation about the different systems between the sort of normal immigration system and the asylum seekers who are protected under human rights conventions.
Right.
And
The
that asylum seekers
liberals on
crowd
this, no one's jumping the queue. There's a system to deal with this and a system to deal with people who come in.
And I think there's a political pitch from the Conservatives to new Canadian communities who are concerned about family reunification, immigration, economic immigration, that somehow those people are being replaced by asylum seekers. And that's just simply not true. So I just think it's important to really flesh out that when they talk about these illegal border crossers and taking up all the energy and keeping the sort of legitimate immigrants
But
out,
it is
that's
tying
not
up
true.
millions of dollars in resources that could be used to speed
It
up
is,
the.
but it isn't changing the fundamentals
The
of the system.
Conservative plan is to reprioritize the aforementioned items that you mentioned: family reunification, economic immigration.
Because they're trying to talk out of both sides of their mouths to those different communities. And I think what's happening here in the Conservative sense is, this is an attack they took a year ago when Maxime Bernier first defected. They went hard on the immigration issues. I'm wondering what their internal polling is showing on that. I'm wondering that Andrew Scheer didn't rule out detention camps at the border. That's a very scary thing, to Anne's exact points about what's happening out of right-wing politics in the United States. And the final point I make is every expert today who knows anything about the Canadian law and our relationship with the United States has said this is dead on arrival and will not work. It is not feasible to get that plan off the ground.
We are going to
It
hear.
does make
We're going to
you-
hear from an expert coming up. In a
It
few
does
minutes.
make you wonder, though, if they're worried about their base after having Maxime Bernier on the debate stage the other night, whether or not there are concerns about trying to re-solidify or consolidate their base, because it was a pretty right-wing announcement.
Let's talk about messaging in the last 3 or 4 minutes we have here. I think we're really starting to see messages focus around the campaign. And Jeff, let me start with you. And the Liberal leader is now on a daily basis at every stop linking Andrew Scheer and Doug Ford and really trying to focus Canadians on the choice issue. And what's the purpose of that? I mean, my reading is, and I'll answer my own question to you, but my reading is this is going hard on that last 10-day message about don't waste your vote on Jagmeet Singh or Elizabeth May. If you want to stop Andrew Scheer, it's got to be me.
Let me get to the air war in the last bit of my answer. I think I'm going to start at more the ground war level, at a local campaign level. And I think local campaign workers, in terms of a message, are trying to, first of all campaigns are going to doors and places where they're going to find voters who might vote for them. They're not necessarily going to people who won't vote for them. And I think when they're talking to those folks, they're saying, look, have a hard look at our program versus the other programs, especially the people who are considering defection effectively to the Green or the NDP vote. The second thing they're saying is we need your vote to win. And that then moves up into the air war, which is where the Prime Minister and Liberals across the country are reminding folks that the alternative government is an Andrew Scheer Conservative government. That is the alternative government. And so nothing ultimately motivates progressive voters more than seeing that as a very real outcome. And so the Prime Minister and Liberals across the country will absolutely highlight for them that Jagmeet Singh will not be Prime Minister at the end of this, Elizabeth May will not be Prime Minister of this, Justin Trudeau will be, or Andrew Scheer will be. Make a choice.
And how does Jagmeet Singh counter that message? He's trying to do it by saying, look, make a bold choice. Like, really vote for what you want and don't worry about what Parliament looks like after the day. But at the same time, he's going around saying, I'll never support Andrew Scheer in a minority government, acknowledging, as I listen to him, that he's not going to be Prime Minister and isn't running for Prime Minister. So how does that help the message if he's saying he's already making decisions about who he will or won't support in a minority parliament?
So it's almost like you could count down and know always at what point in the campaign will the Liberals start with that strategic voting message, right? I mean, you know, we saw Paul Martin do it in 2004. It was like, you know, going to at least 12 ridings that had been NDP or were, you know, leaning towards the NDP and talking about how we share the same wellspring of values. And that was successful. I think we're getting smarter at how to deal with that. And I think in this campaign, I think the Liberals are right to be worried about the support for Jagmeet Singh. He's done very well in this campaign. His support is picking up. And many progressive voters who left the NDP and voted for the Liberals last time because they had hope for a progressive government are disappointed and disillusioned. And they are at risk of those voters moving back to the NDP, particularly with Jagmeet Singh running such a good campaign.
The overriding message I think you hear from Jagmeet Singh these days when asked about this kind of issue is, yeah, I think Andrew Scheer's really bad too. I'll never support him in Parliament. It almost sounds like he's reinforcing the Trudeau message that we got to do everything we can to stop this guy from becoming Prime Minister.
Well, he is, and I mean, that's not dissimilar from what Jack Layton did very successfully. He said, yes, we do have to stop Stephen Harper, but you don't have to choose between, as he said on the debate stage, Mr. Deny or Mr. Delay, that you can actually make a choice for the kind of government and the kind of leader that you want. And I think his kind of authenticity and his strength of character is very appealing to progressive voters, and they're starting to pay attention.
Ashton, where does Andrew Singh go to find the extra 4 or 5% that he might need to form government? And if you look at the polls, he's got to find voters somewhere. Where does he find them?
Yeah, I agree with both actually Anne and Jeff on this point. First and foremost, the last 10 days is all about contrast. They are saying this, we are saying this. We're going to present our vision in a positive light and contrast it as violently as we can with parties that we're trying to beat. But also, any campaigner will tell you these last days, most importantly, we're going to identify our vote and we're going to make sure they go out to vote. It's as simple as that.
Is it more that for Conservatives about getting out the votes you already have than trying to see if you can find a 2 or 3% more support somewhere else?
No, not at all, because I think parties like the NDP and the Liberals are actually bleeding support. Let me give you an anecdote here.
But they're not. Do you think those voters are going to the Conservatives?
For the Liberals, absolutely. I'll give you an anecdote here. When's the last time you've seen a sitting Canadian Prime Minister with a majority in a Callowit or a safe Markham seat within 2 weeks out from a federal election? To me, that says that there's a problem on the home front, and I think their nightly polls are telling them that there's a problem.
Let's see where everybody goes in the next 10 days. That's part of the secret to figuring out what's happening in the campaign. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.